Don't start till we're up.
Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. If you'll please stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Make sure you hit the chair. Yeah. That's the last time I'm getting up tonight.
Good evening. Oh, just making sure it worked. Sorry. All right. Moving down to the approval of the consent agenda. That has the minutes of the February 27th regular meeting and the March 1st special meeting. March bills totaling $2,384,659.95. Financial reports, food service program review, final reading of the 2023 MSBA policies, and the final reading of the MSBA student drug testing policy.
I'll move to accept.
Second.
He's whispering. Conspiracy.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion?
Yes, I have a couple questions, please.
Go ahead.
On page 3 of 5 of our income, there's $149,000, and all it says is Treasury.
Or income?
Yeah, on income. What's Treasury, what?
In the revenue or in the expenditures?
Revenue.
Okay, so that's money coming in, I would say, your treasury from the state, your annual income from tax collection, et cetera.
Okay. Then on another one, there's $341,000. The description says EFO 2242302468. What is that?
I am pretty certain, but not 100% certain, that that's an annual payment that has been made to Great Circle previously. So that's tuition reimbursement to other places, and that typically bills out, I guess, in Marshall around March, and there was a large expenditure there.
Okay,
But I'm not 100% certain. I'll double check on that. I could be wrong, Jack.
okay, thank you.
Good job, Jack.
So we're doing the food service program review, but we've also got food service contract coming down in 8, correct?
That is correct. Separate
Yes.
from, that's just your, that's a report of the year's conduct of business.
Current year versus new year acceptance.
Okay, you guys all have to forgive me because I only got the packet Monday. I only realized that I hadn't gotten it shared with me until Monday. So there's going to be a lot of me catching up questions. So what's the implication of the food service program review? We're just looking at what happened with the year past, and that won't have anything to do with 8A?
No, that has to do with the setting of the new prices and signing the contract. That's for April 1st to go for the next year.
I know. I know I'm going to have some other questions about all that, but that's fine. This is our final reading for the drug testing policies. Did we, are we making any substantial changes to those?
So the district didn't have a
No, I know,
MSB.
but what we did the first reading on.
It's the same one. Yeah, same one.
Should be.
And from my understanding, even if we adopt it tonight, it still has discussion before it's placed in the handbooks, or what we finally do.
So, but we're still approving it to be like, it'll be policy.
Yes.
It'll be policy. It will remain to be seen yet if it's budgeted for to bring in a third party to conduct it, and if it's included in the handbooks or not, which will be June adoption.
Those are a couple of questions that I also was asking Mr. Pettit here, just for clarification as well, because I wanted to make sure of what exactly I was voting for, so thank you.
Yeah, I sure would have asked beforehand, but I did not have access until the week started. So, we can go on. I will.
Are there any more questions or items that need clarification? All those in favor of the consent agenda as gone through, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
And one abstain. Thank you. Looking for adoption of the rest of the remaining regular agenda with no additions.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed or abstaining?
So no changes at all, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That's unusual.
Next, we will go down to public comment. Yes, sir.
I was walking to Walmart earlier and I got the newspaper, I was reading about the levy and all that, the voting for yes. And I got to reading through it and I was thinking to myself, I understand the security and like the dangers and shootings and stuff like that in schools and stuff, but I think there's more problem to, is just the security that we need to pay attention to. I was walking down the street the other day and there was some 13-year-old girls walking down the street and they was like, they started playing music, said something, they was like, yeah, we're gonna go smoke some weed, and, just got out of school, and now we make weed legal, we got little teenagers, starting this stuff, it's easier to get. I don't know, my son told me he came home and got told his baby, and he said, it's not a big deal, Dad, and I said, I don't want you smoking, I said, you wanna go to places I went, I'm an addict, from my experience, I've seen bigger picture stuff, we got kids in porn, pornography, we got kids, my son said, nobody makes a big deal about pornography, vaping, or smoking weed, nothing like that. And I think that's probably, that's more of a problem or issue today. It's causing a lot of shootings, a lot of other stuff, cyberbullying, stuff like that, kids commit suicide, and I think that's something that we need to concentrate on. I know, we're all kind of like used to society and the internet nowadays. Our kids are being more like us have cell phone. They don't know how to take on their own without looking up their phone numbers. They don't know these 5% of the brain. That's the thing I thought about as a problem today. We should go back to blackboards, hands on, got computers. What's the next generation going to do with kids that we leave? Fire department was talking about how they got battery operated electronic stuff nowadays. When that stuff goes out, you're trying to save somebody from cars. My kids don't know how to start power generators. Those are the kind of things that make a lot of difference to us.
So for those of you at home, I'm going to briefly kind of go over a little bit of that because they weren't able to hear what you were saying, sir. But it sounded like you said that there's some other things that you'd like the district to also look at. Sounded like I'm going to classify those into a couple areas such as mental health, maybe addiction, vaping with students, which are things that we've done a lot with through the course of the year and brought in some other measures to kind of not contradict, but counteract maybe in the various school systems as well. And also cell phone use, which is something that we have discussed as a board, and other measures, and making sure our students are prepared going forward. So those are all concerns that we've had and discussed as well, and things that we have taken into very heavily as a board of trying to figure out how we can provide the best educational environments and also make sure students are adhering to the rules within the classroom. So, thank you.
Just one more thing I was thinking about, Bob here, we talked about, people in addicts and stuff like that, kids are not using smoking racks and everything else nowadays. We got a gas station that sells meth pipes here in town. Talk about addicts and try to get them quit. What do you know about the distribution?
So the other thing that you're saying is probably going to be taken better at the police department than the school board, because what he just said.
I realized throughout
Yeah.
my issues.
So the last comment that he made, where there are locations within our community that children as well as adults can obtain things that support their addictions, and those are things that we can't police the entire community. We have to police the community of our schools and our campuses within our district. So, but I advise you maybe to take some of those concerns maybe up towards seeing Mr. Mr. Donnell at the police department and speaking to him. So, thank you. Are there any other comments?
Nice to have comments.
You know what that was all about. I don't even-
Hearing none and making eye contact with the rest of the room, I will be moving down to reports, and we will start with the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Well, good evening. I can tell the time has changed. I've never had the sun in my eye when I walked up here before, quite like I do tonight. It's nice to see everybody here. It feels like it's been quite a while. We pushed this board meeting back just a little bit this month. I'll tell you, my report is brief this evening, but I think it'll be of interest to you. And it'll be of interest to me if I can read from that far away, which I cannot. I'm going to talk to you about a few things with regard to our governance plan. And there are a few things coming to you tonight about that. The first one is going to be reported in Mr. Ranke's report here in a little bit. That's the leadership, fiscal responsibility, and resources related to technology. So I'm not going to speak to that. I want to speak to two things that are under my umbrella. First one, proactively budgeting for major capital expenditures. And I want to tell you that ideally, and I believe this is the first time we haven't been early or on time, but this is going to be an issue that we're going to push back just a little bit, and I want to make sure the public understands why, and I know the board is well versed in the things I'm about to talk about. But regarding our capital expenditures, our governance plan asks that we would proactively budget for things that are capital expenditures, items that are of $1,000 or more, and they cover a lot of things from roofs, HVACs, kitchens. And it relates to the other piece of the governance plan I'll show you in just a moment, which has to do with your long-range facility plan. Another item that we're working on and have been working on all year, the Board of Education directing that work, and Insight Design Studio is being brought in to help us with that. With the district having a levy on the ballot in April, there's several unknowns that make it really impossible to make these long-term projections. And I just want to explain that to the public. So everything I'm sharing here is totally example, tentative, not concrete. But for example, roofs, like I said earlier, fall under capital. So by order of needed replacement, we need to have with regard to these two items in our governance plan, we need to know where and when are we replacing what roofs and why. With the levy versus without the levy really changes our approach to that. The same could be said for HVAC and for restrooms and plumbing upgrades. Major capital examples can just go on and on and on. They're windows, kitchens, freezers, walk-ins, upgrades, annual maintenance contracts, security, vestibules, and I won't read them all, but all these things, that's the scope of it. That's how big this is when we talk about what capital outlay projects do we want for the district, which ones do we have to have, which ones would we like to have, and when are we going to do them, what's it going to cost. That's the extent of what we're working out, and obviously to make long-term plans like that, you need to know if a levy is going to pass or fail and then plan past it, which is why we're delaying the deadline a little bit. I would say we're going to have to delay it 1 to 2 months in order for Insight Design to then respond to the financial position of the district that follows. And I already told you what that one says. I know you can't actually see it, but that was a long-range facility plan. And it's related to projections of Fund 1 and Fund 2. Ideally, the way that we are going to have this projection come to you is we're going to look back 2 years at Marshall Public Schools' financial history. We're going to analyze the current school year, and then we want to project out 2 school years. Starting with number 1, we have that fire from the high school last year. We're just landing this week. I'm excited to tell you, Mr. Ranke and our accounts payable folks have got the final numbers. Insurance has committed to the final numbers and reimbursements. We've got all the details and receipts and numbers, but the check isn't in the bank yet. So that's just landing this week after a lot of hard work by a lot of people that I really appreciate. Obviously, you've got all that COVID money that's come in since 2020. That's inflated budgets looking back on 2 years. We've been working hard to clean that up all the way back in the last fiscal year, making sure we understand every COVID dollar that has come in and where it went. And we just about have all those things landed. In fact, Most of that work, like I said, is really done. It's just making sure the money's in the bank, so to speak, and that I'm not just saying arbitrary numbers, but numbers from our financial accounting system. Analyzing this year, even knowing truly where we are at this moment, is much easier to do when we have all those big things landed. You're talking about millions of dollars over the course of the 3 years' time, around 12 million in total. 10 of that being COVID, 2 of that being the fire, 2.5 or so, 3.1. We'll have all that landed for you here really soon. And then the most important work with the levy passed or not passed, we'll go ahead and project out the next 2 years, and we just obviously have got to know that. We've got to know if there's buildings that are remaining in our inventory or not. Are there going to be 2 buildings that we decommission or 4? And all of those things come into play with those projections. So I wanted to just explain that really briefly so you understand why we don't have that landing tonight. It's the first thing, like I said, I think since the governor's plan was adopted in June that we haven't done on time. But I think it'll be done well, and we just have these other things factoring in. The last item is seemingly unrelated. I'm sorry, I've got to get into some of the, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I wanted to get to my last slide, which will be unrelated. This is not unrelated. I want to talk about those funding streams, the revenue that comes in, and it's not irrelevant rather to the levy, but where the school's money comes from and how that also factors in. Some of these details, regardless of the levy passing or failing, we've got to understand our revenue streams separate from that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I've had a lot of opportunities with various folks, board members, and committees in town, had a lot of speaking engagements and questions, and they've asked things about where our revenue comes from. And it certainly plays into being able to land those capital expenditure plans and long-range facility plans. So property taxes, levies and bonds, those are sources of revenue, money that comes into the district. Our weighted average daily attendance, people in education call that WADA, or WADA, depending on what part of the state you're from, I guess. I don't know if that's actually true, but they say it a little differently. But the acronym WADA is how much does the district get per pupil in the district. We have currently just over 2,400 students, and at current rates, we get $6,375 per year per pupil, assuming they come to school every day. But in translation, that actually has to be divided by their attendance. And I talked a lot lately with regards to that levy ballot initiative that the district has lost students. We're down about 90 students this year. So the math wouldn't be exactly accurate, but if you take 90 students by 6,375, you would come up with around $500,000 in declining revenue. The thing about that number is it has been held there since 2020. It hasn't been adjusted. That's another COVID provision in our revenue that hasn't been adjusted, but whenever you look at our declining student population, that number will decline. They've extended that provision 1 more year. After next school year, we can expect that the weighted average daily attendance, the WADA, is going to be adjusted, and it's going to be adjusted on our student population declining, and they will likely reduce what we're getting for that. So that's something else when I'm talking about 2-year projections. We really need to know where things are going to go there. Another student enrollment situation that we didn't know about, but so far these experts we've brought in to do all this work for us have helped us make some long-term projections in our student attendance. We projected that we're down 90 and we're going to decline another 168 students in Marshall Public Schools. Our preliminary numbers for kindergarten are in for next year, and we are declining 30 students at this time in kindergarten, which is an unexpected decline. So in total, by fall of 2025, we're plotting a course of a declined student enrollment up to 300 students, and that's going to be a significant impact to the revenue for the district. So again, I don't like that I'm late on our governance plan guidance, but we've got to be really careful, really conservative as we make financial decisions right now, and we certainly need to know if the levy passes or not before we make them and commit to next year budgets, which all of this will, factor into. All right. Finally, and these preliminary concerns with revenue that I want to tell you why we're just taking a little more time to be careful. I talked about a lot of it, but fuel, as we're starting to really dig into the budget finally, getting all that fire stuff and COVID stuff behind us and all the things that we've been working on this year to just kind of understand where we've been historically. We've just really been getting into looking at our district's fuel consumption in the last 3 months or so, quite a lot. And it's changed a lot since we initially started talking about Well, things like the staggered start time. We knew that our transportation efficiency wasn't where we'd like it to be by 15 or 20%. We knew that a contributing factor to that is that every bus goes to every school, and that burns more gas. What we are realizing now is since we buy fuel in bulk, we had a couple of large expenditures to fill the fuel tanks to run the buses. 2 years ago, the district budgeted $80,000 for diesel fuel to run its buses. Last year, their actual expenditure was $95,000 in diesel fuel, so $15,000 over the anticipated expenditure. This year, at this moment, and this has gone up significantly in the last 2 months, we're at $154,400 in diesel fuel for the district. That's so far. We're not out of school yet. So we're looking at needing to budget for next year $200,000, very conservatively. I'll probably go higher than that to be safe. But you look at the increase in fuel costs, that's another thing we've got to factor in. The budgets at Marshall Public Schools have been built from prior expenditures. So what that means is a lot of times like that fuel amount, we would roll over in the last few years of Marshall, we'd roll over what was spent the year prior, and we would then adjust the projections in the fall. It's somewhat related to what some people call zero balance budgeting or zero-based budgeting. The concern I have with that is you really need to look at those big expenditures like fuel and say what's going on with fuel prices, what can we anticipate to happen, and so we're going to be shifting in this projection to start budgeting what we intend to spend, which is why I'm talking about the $200,000 to $220,000 range that we'll probably budget for on fuel. And then you get into your salary negotiations, your benefits, those costs, and how it all translates. If obviously the levy doesn't pass, that's going to have some impacts on some of these decisions too. We can't stop with fuel costs, but we've got to drive the buses. So I'm sharing all that to say we really have a lot of homework to do to give a real clear and transparent and fiscally responsible report and plan to the public. And certainly when I've talked about budget cuts related to the levy, you know, that's a reality. If we have the levy versus not, it's going to impact these decisions. Any questions from the board regarding those items? Okay, and that is in regard to, also related to the financial projections, you know, the cost with that long-range facility plan, that Insight Design Studio, IDS is the acronym for that. They also need our financial projections as they tell us what we're going to do. Regardless of the levy passing or failing, I want to make it clear, you guys brought Insight Design Studio on to create a long-range facility plan. We don't have to pass the levy to do that. We just need to know if we have that funding or not to set priorities. So some of those examples I gave you budgetarily were things like plumbing upgrades. Well, the high school bathrooms really need to be redone and remodeled. Absolutely, everybody knows that. You know, without the levy, Insight Design is probably going to say the plumbing infrastructure at Northwest Elementary needs to be upgraded worse. The things you can't even see, what's in the ground, what's under the school. And so we can't prioritize and make a good long-range facility plan until we, again, know if that levy passes or not. We hope we're doing the bathroom at the high school. It depends on all of these things. So again, to be fiscally responsible, we need to know if we do or don't get the levy. If we do not get to deduct all the deferred maintenance from 2 or 4 buildings. So again, we know that there's around $14 million in those 4 elementary schools that we're hoping to decommission. Going forward with 2 of them still in our inventory, so to speak, versus 4 of them not in our inventory, that's going to make a really big difference on our priorities with the budget that I bring to you this year. And then where we want to be in 5 to 10 years with our facilities as well as our academics. A huge thing about your governance plan that you guys approved in June is it talks about our academic goals. Regardless of a levy passing or not, we're still going to have those academic goals. We're still going to improve teaching and learning. And this budget's going to build in academic things like Mr. Ranke is going to talk about in his report. If we're a one-to-one school, everybody has a computer device. We have initiatives saying they're going to improve academically and needing to use those devices proficiently. We've got to build a budget that replaces those devices. Without building a budget that way, you're kind of doing a break and repair approach. So we're reacting. And this is going to approach what are our goals academically and what money do we need to achieve them, because it's not free, obviously, to achieve your academic goals and your teaching and learning. I think that is my last things budgetarily. Any questions from the board on that before I switch gears entirely from budget-related items in the governance plan?
No, Caleb, the only thing that I would say is I hope people understand the desire from the board to have wanted a long-range facility plan for as long as I've sat here, for sure. When we would come to a board meeting prior to you getting here, every month it was something new that we needed, but we'd never heard about it before. And so as a taxpayer or sitting here, I never understood why we never heard about this long-range vision, and we never had a plan. And so I think this is really exciting for the district. I think it's extremely exciting for the board to be able to have some guidance on what's coming, what the expectation is, as well as it gives the community and the community, the district stakeholders, it gives them an opportunity to really see what our goals will be based on a real vision and a real plan that's driven by goals and completing those. So I'm really thankful that we have this in place or will have this in place, and this is a great place to start, I think, with or without a levy. It really gives a true picture of what we need.
Yeah.
And also with or without a levy, looking at what are the have-tos
Right.
versus the things that we can put off. Of course, the levy will make things easier financially within certain areas, but it's also going to tell us if we don't pass it, what are we going to have to do? Because we're going to have to figure out some ways to get some things done and put some other things off that we don't want to put off for our students.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and that's just the reality of it, right? It's a big pie, and money in and money out, and you can't take a slice of pie out of that isn't there.
Well, and I think it's easy for something to be important to one person and then something else pop up. But if you have a long-range plan of what's coming at you, it's a whole lot easier to manage those things that pop up at you when you already had a vision of this HVAC has to be fixed or has to be this summer's project, but then here comes this one. And I just think it's going to be so much better. It's just going to be so much better.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, in that said, and I think it's really relevant to talk about all this, and I wanted to share it tonight before we get into April, because the truth is, in the fall, regardless of things like levies and bonds and various other things, every August, school starts, kids come, teachers come, and we, as educators, go and do what it is we're tasked to do and what's really in our hearts to do. And regardless of the current levy too, that's going to still be the case. So I think it's good to know and to reassure our staff and our students and our parents and community, no matter what, we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep with our goals. There's no reason to lose hope or optimism about the future here, because we have plotted a good course and we're being transparent and we're thinking about where we're going. To that end, I think it's a really great way for me to wrap up my presentation tonight, which is a bit of a shift of gears, but very much related. I received something in the mail about 2 weeks ago from MSBA, who was acknowledging a proclamation from Governor Parsons. And MSBA, in your folders, you all have a certificate of appreciation. He made March an official month of appreciation for board members. In particular, I think this year in an environment post-COVID, and in Marshall, you could say in an environment post-fire. And I know that we have board elections and things going on in April as well. That certificate is to recognize our Board of Education, and I also wanted to just take a big minute and say you guys have served in a very, very trying time in our nation and unknown, uncharted territories. At the end of open session tonight, I'd really like to ask you all to stand with those certificates and let us take a picture and share with our staff how much we appreciate your service and what you've done. Whether you're rerunning or not rerunning, serving more and your election's not up, your time to be elected is not here and now. I just really want to thank you all for all you've done. I think you've laid a great groundwork, and it doesn't take a levy to be great. It can help, but we're on a good path, and it's thanks to your leadership. So I thank you all for that. And don't crumple up those certificates. We'd really like to get a picture with you later after the open session. That concludes my presentation tonight.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you, Mr. Pettit. Mr. Ringy.
Okay, good evening. We have several things to cover tonight. I will try to go through it as quickly as I can, but also be thorough and answer most of your questions. A lot of these that I'm going to go through will answer or go tied into some of our action items later on in our agenda tonight. I figured I'd give a brief overview for our community on what's been going on. So some things that we're going to cover tonight is our governance plan, our CSIP goal number 4, like Mr. Pettit talked about a little bit earlier at the beginning of his presentation. Budgeting for major capital and technology. Oops. We also have our internet WANE bids and provider selection. Those came in a week and a half ago, so the board has to select one tonight. I'll go over those bids. We have our food service renewal and setting of the 2023-24 lunch prices. We are looking at a lunch program management system. We have a Tolliver painting change order. That's an action item a little later on. And then I want to hit on our energy service company partnership for our DNR grant that I talked about last month. And then we'll give a little update on our early childhood wing at the Butterfield campus, our remodel. So, getting started here, this is the governance plan from our CSIP goal from our governance plan on budget for major capital expenditures. Like Mr. Pettit kind of said, you actually have the full report in your board agenda. I worked with CTS, our technology company, on this, and Keeper K's. So he has helped me out tremendously with a lot of this information. And it was good information. There's a lot of stuff that I learned being new into the district, learned from this report. So it was really good. The one thing that we need to start doing, and I'm going to give some recommendations in how I think we should budget. I can't say that we can budget like that, but I think that's some of the direction we need to go and start this planning for technology in Marshall Public Schools. So, just quick overview of the state of technology at MPS. So the big thing that we get a lot of funding for in our technology is called E-rate grants. Basically, that takes care of a lot of our infrastructure, which is our internet providers, our WANE, which is the fiber all run through town that connects our buildings. It's pretty expensive, but E-rate will cover 80% of the cost, and we'll actually talk about that when we come into the bidding process later on. So for the past 5 years, the district has attained approximately $850,000 through E-rate grants, so that's been a big help, and we're going to continue that. E-rate does not cover our internal servers, so that's something that's on local funds that we need to update. We were, I shouldn't say fortunate, but the high school, with the fire, we got new servers in the high school. And then also with local funds, we are updating the servers in the Spainhauer building here. So just quick rundown of numbers. I know that's really kind of hard to see, but some of these numbers, this is where I learned a lot of stuff. So I'm not going to read them all, but throughout the district, Marshall Public Schools has about 1,000 window devices that we manage. We have approximately 3,100 Chromebooks right now. That's in our suite system that we manage. So that's quite a bit. A lot of those Chromebooks, when Marshall Public Schools went one-to-one, they were all bought at the same time. And we need to figure out a way to start replacing those, because Chromebooks last probably 4 to 6 years, and then the license expired. You really can't update them. You need to replace the device. And so when all 3,100 in 3 years, 2 to 3 years, come to their life end, it's going to be a big expense. So we need to start planning for that now. We have 4 camera servers, 13 controlled doors. We have vape detectors, 120 projectors and boards throughout the district, and about 350 phones. I kind of skipped a couple of those things, but that's kind of our big technology, what we have for devices all through the district. So all those things are going to wear out. All those things need to be replaced, and we need to figure out a plan for those. So working on that and working with Mr. K's, these are some starting numbers where we think we need to start budgeting to replace this, and it's all in that packet. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. So I think we need to budget for next year about $25,000 into technology to start replacing our other servers in the district. $25,000 will buy about 2 servers, and they usually last about 5 to 7 years. So if we start that rotation, that would be good. We also need to budget, I'm gonna recommend about $50,000 to start replacing our window machines for our faculty. Okay, we have several older devices. When I mean by a window machine, I mean like an HP, a desktop, it's not a Chromebook. So if we start getting those 60 per year, we can start catching up until, and getting some new devices for our staff. We'd like to put those on a 6-year rotation, and then we would have everything replaced in the next 6 years. The next one is about $21,000, $21,600 to slowly start replacing our student computer labs. We do have computer labs throughout the district for testing, other things that Chromebooks don't work for, and we would put those on a 7-year rotation. Okay, this is the big one. All right, excuse me. So we're gonna have to start replacing our Chromebooks. We're gonna have, Chromebooks are probably somewhere between $400 or $500 a piece. And we're gonna have to slowly start doing it, because if we wait for 3 years and they all come to an end, we're not gonna have Chromebooks. We just can't afford to take that big of a hit. I'm sorry, I gotta grab a drink real quick. So, with that, we would like to do about 500 Chromebooks per year.
Oh, wow.
Bring the drink.
No, it's all right. And then put those on a 4-year rotation. That will give us time for, I said, a Chromebook will last about 4 to 6 years. And this is the rotation I'd like to put them on. So, we would like to go pre-K through 4th grade. They have Chromebooks right now. Some classes use them, some don't. But we'd like to put them all in carts and then have those carts in the building, so if the teacher wants to use Chromebooks, they can start doing that. But I'm going to suggest we start a rotation too through our 5th through 12th grade. So if we're going to do Chromebooks, we would be replacing basically 2 classes per year, every year, and then get 100 of them and then push down to those into the elementary. So if we rotate, my suggestion is we start every new 5th grade class gets new Chromebooks. And then they would turn them in at the end of the year, and they would get the same Chromebooks back their 6th grade, their 7th grade, and their 8th grade. And then when they were done with 8th grade, those Chromebooks, if they were still good, they could go down to the elementary, be used for something else, replacements, or they would be done. But that would allow those 4 years. Harry, don't touch my phone.
I thought they were bringing it to me.
Thanks, Harry. Okay, so if we did that, that would be a good rotation. And then my recommendation is every 9th grader that comes, they start, that would be that class. They would get new Chromebooks and then bump up for those 4 years. And it's the same process. So actually, your 5th graders would have their same Chromebook, hopefully all the way through to the 8th grade. They get a new one in 9th grade and all the way through. So does that kind of make sense? Start that rotation.
Yeah, got a dumb question. We don't have something like this already in
No.
place?
I said to Brad just a second ago, I thought we had a rotation plan in place for the Chromebooks. I'm not surprised to hear that you haven't stumbled upon it.
If there is one,
If
I
it
don't know about it.
exists, right? But I thought we had a rotation for those.
Yes.
But that's okay. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
This sounds like a good idea. Right.
I think we were told we had
I
a
think we
rotation.
did, that's what I'm trying to say. That is what I'm trying to say.
And I know we purchased a lot of Chromebooks at the beginning of COVID, and so we made a large mass buy at that time, so maybe the rotation is a lot with that equipment that we purchased at that time,
Yeah,
because
we
I
were
believe we
also-
bought a couple thousand at that time.
And we were also waiting for some that had not arrived at one point in time, I remember, because they got back ordered on us.
So we had already ordered some because they were supposed to be in on this rotation, and then we needed to order more, and it's okay.
You have it under control now.
It's good to have a fresh start
You think
and something that's gonna work with the rest of the plan, so.
Yeah, and CTS, our technology company, they've been really good, and he's been kind of guiding me through this a little bit to say, we need a plan.
Yep.
Okay, because he sees the tunnel ending here, and we gotta get something figured out.
So, does the budget amount there, does that include deployment by CTS, or is that hardware only?
No, so once he gets the Chromebooks, we would manage those through, and we're talking about it, we haven't decided completely, through our library system, or through our libraries checking them out. I'm not saying that's final yet, but we were gonna figure something
Well, but
out
even,
like that.
even like the Windows devices that the teachers use in their classrooms, does that, there's pretty good, there's a large amount of those also, and there needs to be some work done to them
Set up.
before
Right.
they're plopped on a teacher's desk for use.
Does that include that?
Yes, yeah,
You know what, I'd have to ask Brad, I'm not sure what Keeper charges for each device.
and servers as well. 25,000 for 2 servers is pretty steep.
Right, I would have to ask Keeper on that, so. I can get that information to you, I don't know that off the top of my head. Okay, so, and then our next thing is to look at interactive boards, the smart boards that we have in classrooms. We need to start kind of getting on a rotation for those. So we were gonna budget about $67,500, about do 8 to 10 a year basically, and then do that on an 8-year rotation. And then we're projectors, just regular projectors like the one we're using tonight. About $8,400 put in our budget and get 12 projectors per year on a 5-year rotation. So on all these rotations at the end of the rotation we would have new technology and then start over replacing. So all that put together, and it's really, really small. This is in your packet though. Kind of adding all those up, looking at that, we would be looking at per year, of course, things will go up, but for next year, budgeting $357,750 to start this plan and start this rotation. So that's kind of an overview of the CSIP technology report of what we have, the state of where we're at. There are some other grant funding sources we're looking into. But this is kind of what I think we need to try to set our goals for and try to achieve for to keep current technology. Everybody wants great technology, we just gotta figure out how to pay for it. So, does anybody have any questions on this?
No, sir.
All right. Okay, so moving on. Kind of goes along with our technology, but you will come to this later as an action item. We came up for our internet or our WAN bid connection, our bidding for the district. So we need to approve that. So internet is our internet service, and the WAN is basically the fiber underground that connects our buildings for all that information to travel through. Some of the criteria here that we use this for. It's a little bit different than what's actually in our board policies. Our board policies, anytime you bid, say the best, or the lowest and or best bid. With E-rate, these are the criteria that we work off of. So it's eligible equipment, compatibility with what we have, technical compatibilities, prior experience and vendor track record, and the cost of the equipment and services. So we had just our internet, we had 4 bids come in. We had bid from MMU, Marshall Municipal Utilities, for $1,500 a month. We had Socket, they came in at $10.25 a month. Bluebird, our current provider, they came in at $10.80 a month. And AT&T came in at $2,076 a month. And this is going to go kind of a little bit different because I am going to recommend Bluebird. That is not our lowest bid, but I'm going to explain why here in a second. So I'm going to recommend Bluebird. It's our current provider. We've had really good service with them. Socket was $11, or they were a little bit lower. But when you take this and you take our E-rate grant, so E-rate pays for 80%, all right? So what we talk about, the 80%, Socket we would be paying $205 a month, and for Bluebird we'd be paying $216 a month. Okay, so they're $11 lower, all right? Well, 1 year it would be $132, they are $132 lower. For 5 year, it's $660 lower for 5 years, okay? The problem is, for us to switch to their equipment and for us to switch the IP addresses, I was bid it was gonna be around $2,000 for that work. So for 5 years, we're gonna get $660 savings, but we're gonna end up spending as a district about $2,000 to switch over our IP addresses and the equipment. So, that being said, that's why I'm gonna recommend Bluebird, our current provider. We've had good service for them. It's, I believe, a better financial decision. So, does anybody have any questions on those bids?
No,
Okay.
that was pretty clear in the packet.
You explained it very well too here.
And this is for a how many years
So that's
contract?
5 years, yes. Okay. So that was the internet. Our next one's a little bit easier. It's the WAM bids. We had one bid. That is from MMU, and this is for 3 years. So basically, MMU was the only bidder for $900 a month. And E-rate also covers 80% of that. So that's what I'll be recommending we do. Okay, any questions on the internet or the, all right. Okay, moving on to the next thing. All right, food service renewal, okay? Our current food service company is OPA. The Board of Education, Marshall Board of Education, decided they signed a contract with them in 2020. The letter is in your board packet along with the current prices that they will do. These are the, These are the current prices. We need to get a bigger board. So those are the current prices. I did go back and I verified the letter you have in your packet was the exact same amount that was the contract prices into 2020. So I'm not 100% sure why OPA does this, but they just want to extend the agreement. So you guys signed a contract for 5 years. You're entering the fourth. Next year will be the fourth out of 5 years for that contract with OPA. And these prices will take effect on July 1st, 2023 and run through next June 30th, 2024. So you did the contract already. This is just signing the agreement to go into next school year.
And so the next year, we'll start the bidding process for another 5-year.
Correct. Yes. So you're going into the fourth year. It'd actually be the year after that. It'll be when you go into your
right.
5th year,
Right.
you'll start for the next, getting quotes for the next 5 years.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Any questions on that? Okay, so this will be another action item later on in the meeting. Goes right along with this. We need to set district and lunch and district breakfast prices for next year. I'm going to recommend with the amount that we are at with OPA right now and the amount we are charging, I'm going to recommend a 10-cent increase for our lunches next year. That is historically accurate what Marshall Public Schools has done. And with the gap we have, that's what DESE recommends. So next year, I'm going to recommend for our high school, we would be at $2.45. Middle school would be $2.40. Elementary schools would be $2.35. And our adults would be $3.40. A reduced would stay the same at 40 cents. So that doesn't catch up to what we are actually paying for our services, but that's okay. We're not in food service to make money. We're in food service to feed kids. So, and breakfast prices, I'm going to recommend we're just leave it at $1.15. I don't believe we haven't raised it in Marshall, and I don't think we need to for next year. Does anybody have any questions on setting the food prices or the lunch prices and breakfast prices for next year? Okay. I'm hurrying, everyone. Okay, so the next thing, back it up. The next thing we have here, everybody knows coming next year, our Tyler SIS is running out, and we went with PowerSchool for our student information system. I think we did that a few months ago. Board of Education voted that in. So with that, we need a food service management database and some software for that. So for our OPA to keep track of lunches and all the kids and parents to see lunch balances and basically the whole 9 yards for the food service. We went out, we started looking at a couple different management systems. I had our central office, Ms. Townsend, Ms. Christie helped out, and OPA was there too, helping out with searching and seeing what we could do. We had two companies that gave us presentations and gave us some prices. The first one was Lunchtime Cafe Data Management System, and the second one was EMS Link. I don't know much about EMS Link. They were a little cheaper. You can see the first, for Lunchtime Cafe Lunchtime, they're basically for the first year it's $7,590, and then it's $66.60 yearly after that. For the EMS, they were a little bit lower. They were $65.50 for the first year and then $49.50 yearly after that. The problem with the EMS Link was they were not compatible with our Power School. So parents in our lunch service and everything, they would actually have to completely go to a whole different system to be able to take care of the lunch service or to see the fees. Lunchtime works hand in hand with Power School, so it's kind of a one-stop shop. And parents and everybody, everything will just work together. So that's why I'm recommending Lunchtime. Also, when the committee looked at these, it was a lot more user-friendly. It's just a better piece of equipment. So that's why I'm going to recommend us going with the Lunchtime Data Management System. All right. Anybody have any questions on that?
Is that a multi-year contract?
No,
I don't remember
it's
that.
1 year.
It's 1 year.
It's
Okay.
renewal. Yes.
Okay. Because
So
I
the
know it
committee-
talked about the access points and things. I mean, hopefully with a change in a couple of years, if a levy passes, then our numbers of access points will be different, our POS
Right.
system. So I was just making sure we weren't going to be locked into something long-term.
Now, this management system actually works with all of our existing equipment and everything, so we would not have to do that right now.
Okay.
So the difference was good enough that because we're trying to save money,
Right.
right? So the quality of use was good enough to justify a few $1,000s difference in cost.
Yeah, I believe so, and I believe with our parents, because like in Tyler SIS, parents can go in and they can look at
Balance.
everything through their portal right now. If we went with the other one, the lesser one, they couldn't do that. It's a whole nother thing, it's a whole nother step, but if we go with Lunchtime, it's gonna stay the same through that portal.
Yeah, but if it's worth saving a few $1,000s, then it's worth saving, as long as families, if families can appreciate that
Right.
we've spent the extra money for the sake of convenience and being able to make things a little easier for families, then good, right?
I think from a parent standpoint, but also with kids that were in high school, I left that to my kids some to keep up with their budgets and their lunch. And so if they're able to find it in one place on the same system, I think that's where my kids would have found it to budget. I think if I would have had to make them go to another system, it would have been lost. That's just speaking from working with Tyler Sis prior to this. For me, a one-stop shop would be much worth the money versus having to manage. And then if something's not working, now you're working with, you've got two different people, two different companies you have to reach out to. I would think the small cost would be worth it with time, or even our employees' time if they have to reach out to a company to make something work that's not functioning. I just think that those costs I think that cost is depleted when you start thinking about paying an employee to deal with those things too.
It was a much better program.
I was going to say, and there seems to be some other advantages to the Lunchtime program over the EMS program as far as ease of use and information accessible as well.
Yeah, I think
Correct.
so.
But it is $100 more a month in the breakdown. So remember, we're trying to be frugal, but
I
we're
would agree. I
also
mean, I don't
trying to
disagree.
be responsible to our parents and allow them to look in one place, kind of a one-stop shop. So
Yeah, as I say, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have kids in the district. I'm here because I care about the quality of education. If the parents and the students and the staff think that I just wanted to hear the argument for it,
Right.
right? I wanted to hear some of the detail that would justify it, right? So I'm satisfied. And I'm very glad to hear it's just like a one-year thing, because what if it turns out to be, you know, a
Correct.
real headache, and then it just won't matter? And we'll go with somebody who's a little cheaper.
Correct.
Or more expensive.
Oh, let's hope not.
I mean, there's always a highway that goes two ways, so.
Don't get Jack lit up here.
Okay, are we good? All right. Also an action item, I'm almost done here. Tolliver, we want a change order in our Butterfield campus painting, and what it is for, it's for $3,960. When we originally did the contract, we did it for painting of the early childhood wing. We are gonna have our summer paint crew come in and paint some of the other side, the administrative offices. And we were sitting there one day, I don't know if you guys have been into that building, the old Great Circle building, the Butterfield campus, and looking, that's the entryway. It's really tall, it's really high. We're kind of looking at that, and I'm like, I don't want to climb up there and paint that. And I didn't really know if our summer crew wanted to either, but it did need a freshening up and make it Marshall Public Schools. So, talked to Tolliver, he said since we're there already, he was gonna give us a cheaper price than actually coming in. So to paint that whole lobby and all the cross beams and everything, asking for a change order of $3,960 to get that done. So I think it would just be safer for that company to do that.
It took 4 sets of scaffolding to reach the top of that thing, so they get up there and paint it. I was out there yesterday, and the guys doing the painting said they thought they would finish it up yesterday. So I suppose we better pay them.
I don't want to go up that scaffolding.
No, I didn't want to. Okay. My last big thing, and we're going to get to that. Last month I talked about ESCO, an energy service company, would like to pursue our DNR grant, or a DNR grant that's out there, to really get down into some of the weeds of what's going on with energy in Marshall Public Schools throughout our buildings. There are savings to be had for a district, long range. There's a lot of savings to be had. So we sent out the RFP last month. I received one RFP back from Navitas. They are actually here tonight, and they will give you a presentation when we come to that in the agenda. So if you have any more questions, they're a lot smarter in that than I am. So it'd be a good time to ask. The whole purpose of this and getting a partnership is to get that DNR grant and get that money so it doesn't cost us anything. This will go hand in hand with our long-range long-range facility planning with Insight Design. It's a really good time to do it. There's money out there, so would like to go out and try to get that. Now, I just want to remind the board, if we do not get the DNR grant, if it does not come through, we aren't out any money and we aren't on the hook for anything. So just wanted to say that, and we'll get to that, and they can give their presentation in a little bit. But give a little update on our Butterfield Early Childhood Wing project. It is coming along very well. I'm very pleased with everything. Here's some pictures. They're really small, but all of the wall remodeling is done. And actually all the painting is done in that part of it. I would say 95% of the carpet and baseboard are also gone right now. The flooring half the flooring material has arrived yesterday, and so they're going to get started on that in the next week, and then things are coming along really good. It's starting to look really nice. Okay, does anybody have any questions on anything?
I do have an observation. I thought the narration that you provided in your packet was extremely good and really helped me make decisions on it.
Well, thank you,
I
Eric.
appreciated that.
Thank you.
It was easy to follow.
Okay.
I think it's appropriately timed to say that I think as a community, you can see the board actually being educated
Yeah.
on what's happening in the district and truly being able to come in the seat and know that we're not being lied to, that we're not being we're being given all of the accurate information to make true and honest, educated decisions. And it's taken a long time to get here. But but I'm going out and we're in a really good place. So this is a good feeling to feel like we're well-educated and understand what's happening.
I guess we've got some good leadership here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Under old business, policy adoption and then rent of the Hoot and Tudor houses, and looking at that with the long-range plan being completed. So, moving down to new business. So there are a number of items that Mr. Rinke spoke of in his report, and I didn't count them. I think there's about 8 of them that we're going to be talking about here, looking along. So the first is the food service contract. We're going to enter into year 4 or 5, as he said, with OPA. And we just need to adopt OPA as our vendor again and officially send a letter, give that to them by April 1st, of which they need to present to DESI. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded, and there's information given prior. Is there any other questions about that? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you. Next, Mr. Rinke just gave us information about meal prices. We know the cost of food has gone up. Also, if you've noticed that we are actually still underpaying, or I guess undercharging for the amount that lunch actually costs daily. The numbers for that were over $3, and we're just looking at a 10-cent raise across the district from the high school, middle school, and elementary buildings from where we were last year, with the breakfast remaining the same at $1.15. That needs to be moved as well.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any other discussion or clarification?
So just so everybody's clear, we, no pun intended, but we eat $1 for every lunch that we serve for,
Yeah.
instead of passing that cost on.
And we debated that at great length.
And 94 cents a breakfast.
Yeah, a long time ago, we debated that at great length and decided it was good for the district and their patrons to do
Don't
it that
disagree
way.
at all?
And we do, we recognize that our children and a lot of our children depend on these meals and making sure they're affordable meals for our families, not even just those that are on free and reduced lunch, but as a whole, and that we want our children to be fed while they're in school. That also is very conducive to learning, teachers tell me as well. So I know I don't work as well when I'm hungry either, so.
I had to be convinced, Matt, and they did convince me, so I don't know if we can convince you.
Yeah. Oh, I don't need convincing, I just wanted everybody else to hear that
Yeah.
we do take that, so.
So it's gonna be 10 cents across the board except for reduced price, which stays the same, right?
That's Yes,
I
ma'am.
heard that correctly? Okay.
And breakfast prices, of course, remain the same.
Did
Call
we
the
already-
question.
I was gonna say, do we have a motion and a second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? The next thing is just information in order to certify the election. We will be moving our board meeting to Monday, April 17th at 6 PM. There was also another conflict with the original date that we have, and we'll be addressing when we set our calendar for the next fiscal year, this timing as well. Next is the change order for the Tolliver painting at $3,960.
Yeah, so moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion here? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Or abstaining? Next, I'm actually going to skip over you gentlemen, if that's all right, just for a moment, so that we can go through a couple more of these, and then I'll allow you all to chat. So if you're overly ready, give me about another 2 minutes, and we'll be right back to you. So, next, I'm going to speak about the internet service, and I'm going to separate that just slightly. The internet service, of course, would be, the recommendation was for Bluebird, and then the WAN service as well through MMU, or the 2 recommendations. We can do these together. If there's other discussion that needs to be necessary, we can separate them since they were separate bids.
I see no reason not to combine them.
I move that we accept Bluebird and MMU.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstaining?
Next, looking down at rent of the Hoot House as a residence, there was a sample agreement in your packet as well. We are very concerned about having these buildings vacant out here without people coming through them on a daily basis now that we're moving our operations out to the Butterfield campus, and making sure that we can still have some additional eyes and individuals on the other side of this campus. This will be something that is vetted and worked with through a company in town as well, because we are not, of course, landlords as a district, but we will be becoming slightly that. So,
Yeah, I was going to ask about this under old business. We kind of zoomed past it. So what was the, it's definitely a question I would have asked, you know, outside and out, but I still want to ask it. What process did we're going to go through a local company. What
Yeah.
process did we go through to select that local company?
It has been an interesting process to learn
Kemper.
about, actually, because when you're spending money to purchase something, you have all the bidding guidelines. This actually ends up falling under our policy related to surplus property, and that made it really interesting. And also, it's not money going out, it's money coming in. So I actually had to call and get a little guidance and counsel on that because I wasn't familiar with it. I was looking in all the bidding policy, and it wasn't there. It's because it falls under our surplus policy. So long and the short, you have 3 companies in town that will manage rental property. And I talked with 2 of the 3. I didn't have a requirement for all of them, but I wanted to visit with them, and I was trying to avoid conflicts of interest. As luck would have it, there were a couple of conflicts of interest where I wanted to make sure that we were being transparent. For the 2 I talked to, this is, however, going to be the better deal, and I'm going to define that by the commission. So whatever the rent will be charged on that property, their cost will be 10% of the rental price.
I saw that.
Yeah, that was a better commission price, a lower commission than the other one, but I actually felt this was less conflicting than the other 2, and that was actually why I made the recommendation more than the commission amount. Yeah, so, and then what that we get in exchange for that would be that they collect fees, deal with much of the maintenance issues, find renters, vet renters, et cetera.
Okay, so finding renters, maintenance. How much of the maintenance are we?
So we'll continue to take care of the lawn care ourselves. We already have that contract for another year anyway. And we're not addressing the Tudor house next door yet. It needs some work done that wouldn't fall under the scope of anybody who would lease and manage that for us, peeling paint, et cetera. So anyway, we're gonna start with this one and kind of not jump in feet first, but tread in lightly. And then we will find out about some of that. Let's say that we have a major roof leak. Some of that may fall to us. If it's day-to-day things, they will take care of it and possibly take it out of our revenue that we are getting from that, and just go ahead and take care of it. But truthfully, much of that's in the contract, but I really feel like it's going to be a learning experience. I don't fully know what to expect because you can't define it in exact detail for all those what-ifs. I would say the building envelope is going to fall back to us. Plumbing, roof, HVAC, that's going to fall back to the district anyway. But I think there's potential for some revenue. I'm not going to promise that. I'm hoping that it's breaking even, and best of all, we're not paying for the utilities ourselves anymore. It'll be taken care of by the rental agreement.
and just for community's sake, we have been talking about this for the last couple of months and had some other information as well last month, as well as follow-up information this month in regards to companies within our community, the offers that they gave us as a district of looking over our property, of managing our property for us. And this was the better of the deals that I thought of last month when they were first presented, as we come to this area now. So, is there any additional questions or concerns?
I move that we move into renting the Hoot House as a residence as soon as we can.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion for one last time?
This is per the agreement that was in the packet, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's clear empty now. I think I visited with the girls yesterday out at the Butterfield campus, and they seemed to think they were all moved in.
Yeah.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? or abstaining. The second to last thing we'll have is the food service data management system. Lunchtime was what was proposed by our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Rinke, and we've discussed a little bit about it. It is a slightly higher cost, around $1,500 more a year over our other program that was given to us, but we've already kind of discussed some pros and cons as we felt of it as a board, and there's additional time for more discussion as needed.
I move we accept lunchtime.
That was Lunchtime Cafe, right?
Correct.
A second.
And I was gonna say, Brian, I was just reading their two bids. It looks like lunchtime's a lot cheaper for the parents actually paying online. Because they have a 2.3% plus $1 fee.
The other one?
No,
Oh, lunchtime, okay.
The link is 3.95%, with a $2.60 minimum. So,
Well, and I was thinking, we were talking, it was 1,200 more, right, David?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
It was 1,500 more, I believe.
okay, but even if you figure that, and if you have to train staff on a new program,
Man, we lose money.
I mean, how many employees work with the food service program?
Several,
Okay, so 15?
yeah, at least, our secretaries,
You're still
the OPA management, and then.
Okay, so divide the number of staff we have, they're gonna get trained more than 1 hour on another system, so you've beat your 1,500 into the ground already.
This
Okay.
is still we're still deviating from the system that we've had prior, but it is still, does seem to be more advantageous, because we had to replace it because of the SIS system.
There's also 9 POS licenses involved in all this.
All right.
For 9 different stations, so if
Yeah.
we can slim those down, then we save $1,200.
Good, yes.
$1,600. so.
Yes.
I think I moved. Did we get a
We
second?
got a second?
All right.
Okay, it's been
I'll call
moved and
question.
seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Gentlemen, I will yield to you if you'd like to come up and speak with us.
Okay, now I gotta get this whole big book out.
Gonna read now?
Oh, you're not on.
Hello. Good evening. Good to see you guys. My name is Ryan Terry with Navitas. I'm a business development manager for us. I'm with me tonight is Scott Archibald, Dr. Scott Archibald. He had not long ago sat on your side of the table as a retired superintendent. So now he gets a new experience to be on this side of the table. So feel free to ask him lots of questions. It's just so he's comfortable. So tonight, I guess a couple things we wanted to share. Just talk a little bit about this DNR grant. This grant was actually created, we know the folks at the state that created this grant, and is actually made a lot with companies like us in mind, of how we go to business and what we do for schools and public entities. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and generally what companies like us do. And then I thought I'd share just an example, because I think that's a good way to kind of share how we typically see these projects come together and what you're going to get out of this DNR grant money. And we've got an example. I actually a school district that's similar size of you guys, it's pretty close. So that may kind of shed some light of maybe to what end are you even doing this DNR grant for? So what, right? So that's kind of my plan for tonight. So it's a little bit small, but just to see, just kind of pictorially, we work under a statute in the state of Missouri that allows school districts to use energy savings to help fund and bring in more funds to the school district, either to help pay for projects or to use bond issue money or levy money to fund projects like what we do, energy savings project, and then all those energy savings and capital savings go back into your budget. So that's kind of pictorially what I'm trying to depict here. So companies like us, what we try to do is find savings opportunities within your utility budgets and operation and maintenance budgets, and then again, create another funding source and ways to save money within your district. So again, to what end are you doing the DNR grant? What we do, or what companies like us will do, and what we would plan to do is then help create a plan alongside what you all are doing with Insight Design to help find ways to save money. So a couple unique aspects of how are we really different from an Insight Design. So we often work with architects alongside them, because this is what we're good at. We're good at the energy side of things. They're good at big picture, designing buildings, also the energy side of things, but this is kind of our fastball. And so one of the unique aspects of what we do is that we assume any financial, operating, and performance risk of anything that we recommend. So at the end of the day, when we're done with the audit and what you get from the DNR grant, what we propose is improvements for implementation, construction work. So that can be anything from a lighting retrofit to a building automation system upgrade to window replacements to heating and air conditioning system, anything to do with energy. And so what we would then propose is say, here are the things that we propose, and here's how much money it costs, here's how much money it saves, and here's the financials over time of what would be returning to the school district financially. So that's what companies like us do, and that's what, again, our plan would be to create a plan for eventual potential implementation with the knowledge and approval of the school board. And so the recourse that schools have and public entities have is companies like us guarantee those energy savings. So if that energy savings is not met, then we would be responsible for that, and we take that financial risk. So that's kind of big picture of what companies like us do. Any questions? I'll pause kind of right there before I get into maybe more examples of how typically we work with an architect and the plan to kind of move forward. Okay. When working alongside architects and other construction firms, it's, again, a little bit hard to read, so I apologize for that. Typically, an architect is going to lead all those efforts. So good on you all for hiring a good architect that can lead those efforts and coordinating all construction and master planning. Again, our role, as I kind of described, is we're leading efforts in the design of deferred maintenance and energy type projects, and we're responsible for all those energy solutions, and then the implementation of those. So our little piece of whatever potential construction projects that you would have, we would turnkey that piece, potentially. So that may make a little more sense when I go through an example here in a minute, but that would be potentially under us. Then you would have a construction manager or a general contractor that would do more things like building a new building or parking lots or more infrastructure related items. So that's kind of the delineation of what an architect does and kind of how we fold into that. So just an example, at Oak Grove School District, I looked at their budgets, at least from an energy spend standpoint. You guys are almost identical, so kind of similar size of school district. I think you guys maybe have another building or two. But at least from an energy spend, you're actually pretty similar in similar square footage. So this I pulled this from their master plan. We started this master plan in the fall of 2019. And so we came up with, so on the right side of that sheet, you see numbers, that spreadsheet. You see numbers of total project cost, then ESCO project. That's a company that costs, Energy Services Company. And so as we went through this process over a period of about 6 months, 8 months, you see High School 01 is secure entry, High School 02 is parking lot, and on down to 33, you see some numbers that were skipped because there was other items that we identified and that the architect identified that didn't make the final cut. This was kind of more towards the end of this process in May of 2020. So this was kind of towards the end, and so you can see numbers are pretty exact down to a dollar amount. Some are a little bit more rounded because it was maybe meant for a second phase of a project. But this is the kind of thing that we would plan to do with you all and together with Inside Design, is that we would have certainly things that are more infrastructure related and then potential things that are more energy related. And often those two things mix and match. And so it would just be on the team and on the district to say, where does this scope potentially fall? Where does it really make sense? And so you see the total for the high school at Oak Grove, this is just one of the buildings, $5 million in potential improvements needed, and then 1.6, I think, is that what that says? 1.6 on energy related items that, again, on a separate conversation or separate spreadsheet, we would have details of what those energy savings item per line item. So that would be a part of the analysis as well. So imagine about 4 11 by 17 sheets space, and it goes all the way down. So this is kind of the bottom of that sheet of kind of how it totals up. So their bond issue was about $22 million. And so as always, there's more needs in school buildings than you have money available. So they had projected about $22 million in their bond issue, and then knew that they had other deferred maintenance items that energy savings could help potentially fund. At this point, there's a lot of different ways that I see these projects come together. Sometimes energy projects are funded 100% through bond issues or levies. Sometimes they're funded through lease purchases. And so I don't mean to share this and say this is exactly how I would envision y'all doing it. I don't know yet, but this is just for conversation's sake of kind of how they looked at it. So the architect came up with about, and the construction manager came up with about $22 million of work that needed to be done, and we had about $5 million, $5.7 million. And so the total project cost, or total projects that we were able to do with a $22 million bond issue, we actually did closer to $27 million worth of work. And so what we came to the table and said, okay, we believe we can save about $4 million over 15 years, and that's what we can guarantee. So that left a little bit of a shortfall of about $1.7 million of still remaining needs outside of bond issue monies that they needed to contribute to the job. And so they had, at the time, they had some money in their Fund 4, they had some capital money, and they planned to lease purchase the remaining amount, basically. I'm sorry, lease purchase the savings part and the remaining amount, but they had cash to kind of supplement that remaining amount to fund. Does that kind of make sense? I know I ran through a lot of numbers that generally kind of make sense? Okay. So just to kind of highlight what that looks like, what that looked like for Oak Grove, we projected about 15 years, over 15 years, because we say 15 years, that's what the statute allows, is that it has to self-fund in some way over 15 years. And so with cash that would potentially contribute to the project.
When did you do this with Oak Grove?
So we started the project designing in 2019, and we started implementing the summer, actually right when COVID hit. So they pushed their, I'm trying to remember, they pushed their bond into June of that year. So we started probably end of summer of 2020. And then over the next year and a half is when we worked on that project.
So when you're estimating savings, are you using some inflationary costs or numbers, or how are you estimating those?
So yes, good question. I'll actually show you that in here, and just kind of skip ahead here. So for year one at Oak Grove, the total projected financial benefit, that would be energy and operational savings, would be about $177,000 is what we thought we were going to get. And then the next year, because of just the utilities increase, and so we have a conservative about 3% increase year over year, which we've actually seen. You all know it, probably closer to 5 to 10% year over year in recent 10 to 15 year history. But we're using that as about a 3% typical year over year change. So yes, we do take into account inflation for that. To say, okay, you save a million kilowatt hours. What's that today? What's it next year? And what is it 15 years from now? So that's an accurate representation of what it could be in your budget, should be in your budget.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So we projected about $4 million of estimated savings over 15 years, knowing that the project cost is going to be about 5.7. So with their financial advisor, they said, okay, we need to make up that 1.7 million, and then they decided to lease purchase the rest of that $4 million because we can guarantee that payment basically for them. And so again, like I said, they plan to fund that through some bond funds, through some cash and Fund 4. So this is a slide I was on earlier. So their total projected financial benefit is on that left side for year one, was 177. Year two with inflation was about 182. So what we actually saw in year one was way over that projected benefit because we got about $112,000 in utility rebates from Evergy. And so if you subtract that out, actually with utility savings and operational savings, because they were able to decrease significantly some of their work orders that they were spending on maintaining old heat exchangers that kept failing, actually a pretty substantial amount. And all what that accumulated to was about $300,000 of actual savings for year one. And so year two, we just finished the year two annual report reported to the school board. They're at $320,000 without any other rebates, typically a one-time thing. They're actually got $320,000. So all the way on the right, we track for then what's the surplus or the deficit of what we projected on energy savings. So then what does that look like in the overall picture? So how does Oak Grove use that? How do other school districts typically use that? So again, back to this slide. If the trend continues from where they're at, they'll actually get over the project cost about $6 million of actual savings and a project cost of $5.7 million. So then what do they do with that? Well, so because they paid for that with bond funds and some cash, that actually goes into their Fund 1 and can be used for other, whatever the district would need, different educational programs. And so Scott, maybe you want to talk about maybe what you did and kind of what you saw. So we projected $80,000, but we knew we were going to get a certain amount, and kind of how you looked at that.
So,
Let him have the microphone or they won't hear it online.
sorry.
You're okay.
Normally I talk loud enough anyway,
You're
so,
okay.
the old educator voice in me. So on a much smaller scale, because I was in a smaller district, but I ended up doing $1 million project. And in that $1 million, I took care of a roof, HVAC, issues, building automation, weatherization, LED lighting throughout the whole entire district, solar panels, and, I think that was it. It was a lot. And it was all deferred maintenance. It was all stuff that I knew I was gonna have to do, and I'm like, okay, how am I gonna do this? Well, in my mind, how I wanted to do this, I started off with, I looked at it as a lease purchase. Did $1 million, it cost me, it was an $85,000 lease is what it was gonna cost me. Based on their savings, they guaranteed me $30,000 a year savings each year, so it dropped my payment down to $55,000. Well, the next year I turned around and rolled in a no-tax bond. I took all $85,000 that, what it was, and rolled it in teacher salaries. Because that was my goal, to bring up our teacher salaries. So that's why I use the money. You can use the money however you need to use it. It's, it's however you want to use that savings. But it's a good thing, and, and I was skeptical too. I saw my typical utility bill was $90,000 a year. That first year, after that first year, it was $60,000, guaranteed. So I was, but it was legit. So, it was a good deal, and my community bought into it. My school, we had the solar panels, when we put solar panels on our roofs, we actually brought that into education about being green. So my science teachers were teaching in the classrooms and so forth too, so.
Which school was this?
Orc,
That is also in this book. There's a slide of Warwick and a few other schools as well.
A lot of schools we know are in there.
it's a good process. And it's a process that I believe in, and that's why when I decided to retire, these guys talked to me, I'm like, you know what, I'm not gonna go work for somebody that I don't believe in what they do, and I believe in it, and that's why I chose to work for these guys, as something to do on the
Did you
side.
have any apprehensions about the predictions of the savings being so far out? That's one of the hangups.
Yeah, I did.
You know where I'm going.
Yeah, I know exactly where, and that's why I was,
Who knows
you know,
what's
I was
gonna-
waiting to see how that played out, and so far, those savings have been there, and then it's guaranteed, so if it's not there, then you just make a phone call.
Let me have that microphone back.
I think that's a great question, because I want to acknowledge that. So one of the things we believe in is, so what happens in year 11?
Yeah.
Right? And so what we try to do in all of our projects, and so you may talk to other folks that we work with. Oak Grove is one. So Mindy Hampton came from Wellington, is no dog in the hunt, because she's brand new superintendent. To look at it from fresh eyes, it wasn't her decision. So what she's seeing is what we're now in year 2, is what we're trying to do is change a little bit of the culture in the buildings to say, so if we were to leave and no longer exist as a company, can we maintain the energy savings? And so that's important, right? Mm-hmm. And so if the building HVAC runs 24/7, you will not get the savings if we were to disappear, right? So I do think one of the things we believe in, we want to make sure happens, is that we educate building operators and do the best we can. So at year 20, we still have that culture of doing that.
I don't know if are you guys fielding questions, just open questions now? I hate to derail.
No, so that's kind of where I wanted to get to.
Okay, well, great. Let's say, so I wonder how many of the projects that you develop are based on a lease purchase model. What about if you're in a district, not that I would know one, where the words lease purchase cause the community to have an allergic reaction?
Right. Good. So that's why I said at the beginning, I know I'm going to say that about, that's what Oak Grove did, and that is not the model that, every school district's unique. So Fort Osage did not have excess money that they could use a lease purchase. Now they did, but it was all funded through energy savings. So every dollar from year 1 had to have enough savings to offset that lease purchase payment.
Okay.
And so And now that, what they did is then, when they passed their bond issue, they did actually closer to what Scott did, is that they rolled it and paid that off. But what I often see schools do is within the levy or within a bond issue, that is paid for upfront and not financed at all. And so then all of the savings is rolling into your general fund.
Okay,
And so that's a model that we see often as well.
all right. So it's not presumed that we would have to be doing any
Not at all.
sort of.
In fact, companies like us can't make money on how you pay for it, whether you finance it or whatever you do.
Right, but if a lot of the projects that you develop have a lease purchase in mind,
Well,
that would give me pause.
That's right, and so we would not develop the job with that in mind. So if you have X amount of money that you could allocate to something like this, then that's what we would design to. We wouldn't want to go into the design process and design that, knowing that is not in the best interest or what you all want to do. And so that's just time and effort that we would spend in vain.
Sure.
So we wouldn't want to do that either. So
On the
Well,
other hand,
that's why
there's-
they would work with like Inside Design to make sure that they're very educated on what the district, what our future plan will be, and what we have available to use.
And it may be a project that happens 2 or 3 years from now, or 4
Right.
years from now. And we see that sometimes as well. When the district may be in a better place once other capital projects are done.
And there's something to be said for not precluding all options, right? So it's not as if we wouldn't want you to tell us, oh, we think that this, well, I guess that's one of my questions, right? It's like, this comes with a funding model attached. So the projects that you develop kind of are proposed to us with a funding model in mind, right? But that could be, here are several options for how this
That's right.
gets funded
So typically we work with, I know y'all work with Raymond James, is that right?
right now.
Right now, so whatever financial firm you use, typically work pretty closely with them, whoever it is, to help build that model of what that can look like.
For a couple scenarios, if you guys don't mind me kind of helping, and the people at home, I want them to be able to see how this could work for us. So be it new construction or old construction, just correct me if my understanding's wrong, but I think we're on the same page. So first, in the new construction, we have this levy out there that might build a new building. If that were to happen, your energy savings could actually basically help stretch the levy amount for the build, not necessarily with borrowing more, but to say, okay, we're going to build this building, but through energy savings with your help, we could put the lights in the building and that wouldn't necessarily come
That's
out of the
right.
levy, is that right?
That's right, yep.
And then for old construction, this building, a good example, we've got a new wing, I call it old, but part of it is old and part of it is new here at Spainhauer where we are. So if we were wanting to replace these light fixtures and ceiling grids, modernize the older part of the building, replace them with LEDs. Likewise, we don't necessarily have to borrow money, am I correct in that? We could use the savings to pay for the project, and that's what you guys would do in an older building? Am I close to accurate on that?
Lots of ways to do that, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
So we replaced the high school lights and put in new lighting over there. Have we identified like how those things have saved us already? Not yet?
have not,
Okay.
Haven't looked at
We
that.
probably haven't had much time to do that yet, I would think.
not quite.
but-
Yeah, and we'd have to calculate some, like the inflation if it's gone
amount
up
of time,
with the
yeah.
electricity. I'm sure it has, natural gas has.
Just
but
curious, I
no.
mean, that's, yeah.
Well, we
It does
really
not-
need
That's a
help
good
with this
question. We
diesel
do need to
fuel
do that,
this
so.
around.
Does Navitas have experience working directly with IDS?
Yes, we were several times with them, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think I just want to remind everybody, we talked about some construction and everything, but we are just in the first step of this, of just getting the DNR grant. And that's kind of the first step, and that's kind of what we want to do.
That's a good point. And again, I want to delineate, to what end are you doing this grant? And the point is what you're going to get out of that grant is something like this.
Just give us an evaluation.
Of
where we're at.
evaluation of kind of what could potentially fit in, what are potential energy savings, how's that fit into the long-range plan? And then, again, our interest in this is eventually in hopes of a construction project down the road several years. But that's what we want to understand is, do we really provide that value or not? And if we don't, that's okay. And the good thing is, again, with the point of that whole program that the state developed it is so it could help schools at least evaluate this kind of process at no cost to the district.
Now, we're not being asked to spend any money on this thing now if we go forward, so we're really not at risk
That is correct, yes.
following the conversation.
Right.
More
Well-
of a retainer situation.
What? Yeah. Well, I'm always happy if somebody's gonna save us some money somewhere down the road.
Yeah, and there's a lot of money out there right now with federal incentives, with things that are coming through. So that's something else that we get hit up a lot
Especially
currently.
Try to change it into, you mentioned solar panels, especially going some kind of directions like that.
Yep.
We got a lot of flat roofs around here. Famous Lake, what we got.
Can I move?
So this is an action item to move forward with the grant?
That's what I just said, Matt, yes.
I make a motion, we move forward.
Second.
Is there any other conversation or discussion or any other facts anyone needs? I see a lot of head shaking, so I think everyone understands where you're going from, and we'll review some of this material and find out where we'll be going in the future. So thank you for your time. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right. Thank you for your time tonight, gentlemen, and everyone else. So
Yeah, right there's mine.
we will be adjourning now to closed session for legal actions or litigations, lease, purchase, or sale of real estate, hiring, firing, disciplining, or terminating, preparation of negotiations with employee groups.
So moved.
Second?
Harry?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Aye.
Aaron? Brad? Matt?
We gotta get our
Aye.
picture taken.
Thank you all.
Keep your certificate out, Jack. We gotta get our picture taken.